If you want Colts talk all year long, you're in the right place.
Fires it upfield, caught over the middle. Michael Pittman Jr., there he goes! He's at the 40, he's at the 30, slips out of a tackle, 20, 10, 5, touchdown! Michael Pittman Jr. takes it 75 yards to the house. Big run, angling left, 40, he's at the 30, down the near sideline, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor, a 49-yard gallop to pay dirt.
In the Indiana Union Construction Industry radio studio, let's get the podcast started.
All right, you're right. Hey, the official Colts podcast is here. I'm Jeffrey Gorman. JJ Stankovich is here. Latte Lara Overton is here. You are our pseudo Indiana.
Freshly caffeinated?
Yes, you're a pseudo Pacer correspondent.
There we go.
I love the shirt that you're wearing today, Indianapolis versus the world. And, guys, a lot going on 56th Street tonight. Obviously, this week, we know about the OTAs starting up. Let's give a little love to the Pacers. Lara, I'll start with you. This thing starts with Boston tonight. Eastern Conference semifinals are done. This is an Eastern Conference finalist. Hats off to Pritchard and over there and Coach Carlisle. But they are facing a great team with great players and arguably matching up. How do they look against this Boston team?
I like the fact, now some people would say, okay, Boston is obviously coming in fresher. They're at home, all of this. But I kind of like the fact that the Pacers are just rolling straight in off of that 7-game series, especially with the shooting performance in Game 7 and just carrying that momentum rolling. I like that idea rather than if they'd had 5 days off or whatever it might be between series, right? Yeah. Super excited. I think that this is going to be a fun matchup. They're a lot different. This is a very different team than the Knicks. So it's certainly a new challenge given there are superstars. That is a Boston team that is certainly built to be a contender. I love, though, the depth of this Pacers team. They're just like such a gritty team. I love that they've brought some nastiness into this playoff that we haven't really seen from, I would say, haven't really seen from anyone else, maybe outside of the Minnesota Timberwolves to clinch their Game 7. But yeah, I'm just trying to.
You know what I like about this Pacers team? Like, so this is like, I'm just a dumb basketball fan, and I love it. I don't want to be a smart basketball fan. I want to be totally dumb watching basketball. I need a sport where I don't know about PER or efficiency or anything. I'm just like, this is fun. And the Pacers are really fun.
They are fun.
As we know. But like going from watching the Pacers, who just, the way that they play, it's just so fluid. You got all this motion. You got these great passes. You're jacking up threes. To watching the Timberwolves Nuggets game, it was like, okay, I understand the Timberwolves and Nuggets are playing some defense, but like, man, I'd much rather watch the Pacers. Yeah. This is a way better experience as, again, a dumb basketball fan. That's where I want to be.
You guys talked about the shooting. Like 61 years, the NBA has not seen something like that they did with their shooting.
67.1%.
Yeah, it was like silly like that. For the first time stuff happening or records breaking after 60 years in the NBA. Embrace it, because this is not everybody is talking about these Pacers in Indianapolis. Nobody is talking about those Pacers around the NBA community.
Well, yeah, as we learned on the pregame show. Sorry, Knicks. I was at the track on Sunday for like the Fast Six and the Last Chance qualifying and all that, and I had the game on my phone, but Dave Calabro over the PA just kept giving updates, and you would get this roar of like an update from Madison Square Garden. The Pacers still up now by 17, and it would just go, everyone would lose it. That was really cool.
Okay, this reminds me of back in the day when I was emceeing Pacers games. There was simultaneous the Pacers home game, regular season game, and the Colts playoff game against the Chiefs.
Wow.
That epic comeback. And Michael Grady was doing PA at the time. Michael Grady is now the play-by-play for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And when the Pacers would be in a timeout, he would provide updates from Lucas Oil Stadium of what was happening in that Colts-Chiefs game. So the next week in Indianapolis, you have Carb Day on Friday. So you have Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah,
Saturday, and then race on Sunday, and then Eastern Conference Game 4 on Monday.
Wow.
Yeah. This is about to be, there's going to be a lot of beer consumed.
Oh, gosh.
Here.
The month of May.
Also, by the way, I love that Bostonians can't get here. You can't get a hotel here. You want to go stay out, in Westfield for $350 a night? Okay. You can do that.
That's what's happening.
Yeah,
because
there are no hotels available downtown because it's the race weekend.
the month of May,
It's great.
there's nothing
but
like it.
Pacers fans at Gainbridge this
Love
week,
it.
except for Bill Brooks. He might, if he shows up.
Pacers in
6.
Pacers in
7.
6. Pacers in 7. Okay, we're
Go
gonna
to
be
the Garden.
monitoring it.
You already went to one Garden and won. How about you take out a couple of Gardens?
And by the way, congrats to you for changing your allegiance last week.
Yes, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks
Speaking
ago.
of the Garden, did anyone see Pat McAfee yesterday on his show bringing out all the gardening tools?
Oh, with Mike
Greenberg.
Mike Greenberg from
It was
ESPN.
it was outstanding. It was just
was.
so classic. So well done.
The Garden. All right, good job, Pacers. Continue it. We're going to talk about the Pacers because this is an epic run. They're on their way to the NBA Finals. But we do have some football to talk about. A big week. The OTAs are here this week. That means veterans and rookies getting together. Now, one of the big things is the first look of Anthony Richardson in this offense throwing a football since last October. How big is that?
I mean, it's a big deal for just everyone else to see the progress he's made. Like internally here, like when we had Cam Turner on last week, like he's seen Anthony throw and it's been like, whew, no restrictions. There's nothing holding this guy back in terms of the physical act of throwing from the shoulder surgery. Now it's like we all get to see it. You're going to get on Wednesday a lot of coverage of how Anthony looks in practice, how he's letting it rip. And these are going to be these are not supposed to be competitive practices. This is all about install. This is all about, hey, we're installing our base plays in these situations, and it's not designed for like, man, Anthony he threw an 80-yard bomb to A.D. Mitchell, and oh my gosh, but like if that happens, of course we're going to get excited about it.
Here's what's more significant, or I shouldn't say more, but as significant is it's reps, establishing continuity, just getting time, getting to know your receivers, because that time last season was so very limited, even in training camp before he was named the starter, splitting those reps with Gardner, and then very limited, of course, small sample size into the season. So to me, it's all about maximizing the time on field. That's something that Cam was talking about, is how much can you do, because there are obviously the NFLPA restrictions on the amount that you're able to do. So making sure that time on task is very intentional, and you get as much as you can, certainly with the guys he already knows, with Pierce and Pitt and Downs and Ashton Doolin, but the new guys as well, and creating and developing that. I mean, we haven't seen Anthony Richardson throw a pass to Jelani Woods.
Right.
Nope.
Think about that.
We've seen him hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor one time.
So to me, it's the pass catchers, the dynamic, learning one another, and this becoming second nature, having that time now. We know that they'll disperse after mini camp and they'll get together, right? They'll go and throw somewhere and do all that. But watching it all with these guys on field together, this is critical time in these 10 OTA sessions that you're able to have.
Well, here's where OTAs. You got another point. Go for it.
One quick
Get your
follow-up.
point.
One quick follow-up to that. One thing, I was hosting an event. Anthony came by to do a Q&A. This was here at the facility last week, and we were talking a lot about this time and how he's spending this time and working with his teammates. And he mentioned that one thing that's really important to him is not just the time they spend on field, but the things you're doing outside of the facility. He mentioned that, like, he's going to Michael Pittman's kid's birthday. Like, they're throwing a birthday party and he's taking his family up there and spending time doing those type of things. So I thought that was a really cool perspective on the investment that these guys are making, not just in this time as teammates that they have in the building, they have in the locker room, they have on the practice field, but getting to know each other's families, right? Going over there, kids playing together, doing all of that. So this is a huge priority for Anthony Richardson, for this offense, for all of these teammates to maximize this time that they all have while they're here in town.
And by the way, like every single player who you talk to about that kind of stuff, that off the field stuff where you're getting to know the family, that matters to them. That matters so much to them. That if you, like offensive linemen talk about this a lot, where if you get to know not just the person, or not just the player, but you get to know the person and the family and who they really are, that makes you play for them harder. Like there's just that's it. Yeah. It's kind of intangible thing that you can't really see or quantify or even sometimes know unless you're on a football team. The difference for me in OTAs is like someone who is just observing it, is that this is the first time you do get to have offense versus defense. You can have 7-on-7, you can have 11-on-11. And what that does for Anthony is okay, here's how the play is installed. Here are the progressions. But, hey, now with Pittman, hey, if we get this look, this is what I think you need to do. Pittman can say, hey, this is what I'm going to do if I get this look. So then when you rep it again in training camp, you do the same thing. And then when you get to the regular season, you get that look, and all of a sudden, all Anthony has to do is look over at Pitt.
Right.
Give him a look. You got it? Okay, good. Let's go. Like, you don't have to, totally kill a play. You don't have to change it. Hey, we got this look. We've already ran this twice. Let's go for it.
Absolutely.
Like, that's where that foundation begins to get built during OTAs.
Ben Arthur is coming up from Fox Sports. He covers the AFC South. We sat down with him to find out about the Colts' opposition in the division. He's coming up, and also we have reckless predictions. I can't wait for this. This is the stuff that you want to get online, social media, Twitter, X, whatever you want, because possibly some very reckless predictions are going to happen. I want to keep this up maybe for a week or two and see what happens, but I'm interested to finding out yours. But one thing I want to see from this OTAs, and I'm going to ask you guys outside of the quarterback position, is swagger from the rookies. I don't know if I'm saying this the right way, but I'd love for these guys to be, if you're going to be nervous or have any butterflies, make it your first 2 days that you were in the building a couple weeks ago. Walk around these OTA practices and in that locker room with some swagger, feel comfortable, feel, hey, I'm at home right now. I just don't want to see some rookies and some new players that are out there that are kind of walking around with their head on a swivel, though. It's like, I'm just talking about, I want everything, and I'm asking for a lot there. But to have these young kids come in here and get comfortable real quick, I just think that's so important for these guys to be able to take off and say, hey, here's what I do on the football field.
What we've seen so far is the top half, in my perspective, is pretty NFL ready when you look at this draft class. This is a group that was intentionally drafted to immediately contribute. This isn't, for the most part, projects, 2 or 3 year type of development situations. Leatu Latu was built to come in, step in, make an impact. A.D. Mitchell, same. These offensive linemen, same. They're going to be contributors. They're going to be, in that rotation up front. Anthony Gould is going to be a guy who probably is going to be that primary guy on kickoff return. And that's just, again, that's kind of the front half. Then you have a whole lot of guys, especially when you look at kind of that cornerback and DBs and linebackers and all of those guys. So I haven't seen from this group that it is at all that like, oh no, I'm not ready for this. I'm in over my head.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten that sense whatsoever in the time that we've been able to have these rookies around.
The one thing I always will think about with OTAs is like, just because you stand out in OTAs, maybe you exceed expectations in OTAs as a rookie, like, we could get to the end of this and be like, man, like, player X, he really had a great couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. He was making plays all over the place. It's totally different when the pads come out in training camp.
Yeah.
So you can't overrate what you see out here. You also can't underrate what you see out here. Like, this is sort of the battle I've been fighting mentally in the 7 years I've been covering the NFL now, of like, how much do OTAs really matter in terms of like projecting out? And I think what they matter for is like, does it look too big for you? Are you just are you underwater almost? Which kind of goes to your point, Jeffrey, of like, let's see him come out with some swagger, come out and act like you belong. And you know what? If you don't go out and you make a ton of plays, or you do go make a bunch of plays, like that doesn't matter as much as just how are you operating right now. And I think that's what you're really looking for.
And here's what I think is more indicative too, is how they treat the time between minicamp and training camp. Because when you think about rookies coming into the NFL, they're coming out of their collegiate seasons, maybe they play in a bowl game, but they have been training for the combine, training for the draft, being coached up, then they get drafted, then they come in this building. They've been very regimented and guided, of course, through that point. Okay, now okay, I'm in the building for 5-6 weeks, whatever it is, in between rookie minicamp and vet minicamp. All right, now that you know the team that you're going to be a part of, you know the playbook, you know what the expectation is, now what are you doing between when you're out of the building after the first week of June before you report back in July 20, whatever it is? That, to me, is a really significant indication of who is going to come in and who is going to be a difference maker and who the stage is not too big for.
Right, because that's your first break that you've had since in a year, in like probably literally a year. That's your first break. And do you use that time to get away? Do you use that time to continue getting better?
Find out.
Do you seek a veteran that
Right.
you're like, hey, where are you going to train?
Right.
Can I come with
Yeah.
you? Can I spend 2 weeks, in Tampa or Houston or
Right.
wherever you're
Yeah.
going? That's where you know who's
We've
a
seen
pro.
a little bit of that with Latu and Quiddy.
Quiddy. They're already
doing some
working together.
stuff. Yeah.
Well, and we saw it last year with Anthony and Gardner,
Well,
where they were.
DeForest Buckner always does a great job of
Yep.
that. I'm not sure if that's in the spring or in the summer, but he always recruits a big group
Mm-hmm.
of guys, and it might be both periods or whatever it is. We've seen a group of the O linemen go up and do that together as well. I think an area around Chicago where they'll typically do some additional work. So it's something that's common, but you always take note of who those people are, especially the younger players that take advantage of that.
JJ, what's allowed, what's not allowed over the next 3 weeks?
Yep.
Well, leading up to the mini camp, rather.
Yeah. So right now you're in the next 2 weeks are voluntary OTAs. So participation is voluntary. You can the difference here again is it's offense versus defense. That is now allowed. Previously it was just there was no offense versus defense. You could do kind of routes on air as an offense. You could do drills as a defense, but nothing that pitted offense versus defense. It's still not supposed to be competitive. You're not going to see these wide receiver versus cornerback, super competitive one-on-one drills or anything, but you can do things that get the offense in front of the defense in front of the offense. You still have time restrictions. You still have a certain allotment of hours per day you can be in here. So that's the next 2 weeks leading up to mandatory veteran minicamp at the start of June. I believe that's June 4th through the 6th, if I'm correct about that. That's kind of your last chance. And that is, it's the same format of, helmets, no pads, and 7-on-7, 11-on-11 type stuff where you're installing and you're getting that base foundation of, hey, this isn't, when we get to training camp, it's not the first time we've repped these plays.
Yeah.
That's what you're going for. Just to go back to that, what's the meaning of OTAs and what's the importance of it? The one thing I keep thinking about too is last year, remember how Anthony Richardson kind of didn't have anyone to throw to during OTAs, where Josh Downs was injured. Michael Pittman was dealing with something. Alec Pierce was dealing with something. Like we mentioned, Jelani Woods was dealing with something. And I don't think it really impacted much. You can overcome that. So I don't want to overrate participation in OTAs. It's very important this time of year, but it's not as important as training camp participation.
Right.
That's sort of the thing you have to get.
Hello, position groups. What are you excited about? I mean, like we said, it's non-competitive, but it is sort of competitive, shorts and helmets. But the position groups, and this team is not set, but obviously there's not a lot of spaces open as far as position groups go. Which one are you looking at specifically?
I think competition among roles within the wide receiver room is going to be
fun.
It's going to be really beneficial. I think it is going to be something that group has been fortified, and it is a deeper group than we have seen in the past. And I think that these are very complementary pieces to one another with the different skill sets, the experience levels, all of those different things. I think that's one that you've certainly got to point to as being one of, the more intriguing areas, of course, of development with both the returning guys and then some of those additions to that group. And just what we have seen Reggie Wayne and his ability to do in leading that group. JJ, I know you had a great piece on Reggie, just recently, and it's one of the quotes, I think, from Chris Ballard was, we always knew that he was a great player, but what we're figuring out is that he's a pretty dang good coach, too, right? I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I think that's one of the things, too, is what does Reggie do with that group?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also really intrigued with the addition, I've said this time and time again, but Charlie Partridge in the defensive front. And not that we'll necessarily learn a lot about that now, but I do think that is going to be an area when you start to get into those training camp practices is how he is conducting things and what you're seeing from that group in terms of taking another step after what they were able to do last season. Because although they set the franchise sack record, it's a very hungry group to be even more impactful, be even more ferocious up front, and it's something that you're going to have.
The area I'm looking at is tight end. I know we've talked about it a lot here, but there's just so much unknown there, and it goes to Jelani Woods. This coaching
goes through or goes to?
That's where my intrigue goes to is Jelani Woods because I mean, we've heard it time and time again. Like, this coaching staff hasn't worked with Jelani Woods yet. And you think about what he was in 2022, where you're thinking, hey, he's got some potential to him. He's doing some good things out there. And then he's not able to play in 2023. So does he continue to build off what he was in 2022, or is he a guy who we get to the end of training camp and you're wondering if he's going to make the roster?
Right.
He's got a real opportunity in front of him to cement himself not just as an NFL player, but as a guy who could be a weapon on this offense that you didn't have last year.
That tight end group the last few years has always been that one in training camp. We're like, what is going to happen?
Right.
Like, you think about a few years ago, Drew Ogletree with the injury, because he was emerging, and there was so much that you were figuring out within that group. And now this year, you've had the emergence of Will Mallory and how significant of contributions he was able to make. Kylan Granson is kind of a completely different weapon from those other bigger bodies that you have in there. So
here's the thing with the tight end room that I keep going back to is, like, the Colts don't have a Travis Kelce, Dallas Goedert, George Kittle
because
type.
To your point, what we talked about, how many of those are there in the league?
There
Fewer
aren't
than
that
10.
many. Right. But I think the collection of talent the Colts have, they like this collection of talent. Where you got Mo as kind of your, hey, this guy's gonna be our big run blocker and he can catch it a little bit. And then on the opposite end of it, you've got like Kylan and Will Mallory who are gonna be more of your, they're gonna go catch the ball type guys. It's a really interesting collection.
Guys,
but then right there in the middle is Jelani Woods.
Exactly.
Where
There's
he's
only
the
so
guy
many
who
spots, guys.
Right, where Jelani Woods has that upside of being he can catch it and he can block type guy. And that is where I'm so fascinated to see how he looks out there in OTAs.
I almost feel like, too, this is a total detour, but I feel like Mo needs to come in and be our guest analyst for Eastern Conference, Western Conference Finals contribution, right? Like,
yes, yes.
Well,
the
okay,
former
look.
VCU basketball stand. I mean, he still follows
Yeah,
the
I
NBA
know,
very
I know.
closely. Like,
I do think that EJ Speed would probably be a pretty good guest to talk about the Mavs coming in here.
oh, that's
Big
true.
Mavs guy,
He
EJ
is.
Speed. He once told me that he this was back when he was kind of making fun of Dallas Flowers a little bit for his high school basketball career, and he goes, if you got me on the Mavs and you got Luka here scoring 30, I'm putting up 40 next to him. That got a big old
What if Julian
groan
Blackman
from Dallas Flowers.
Julian Blackman would have anything to say.
Oh, yeah.
Good ball player.
Absolutely.
Dallas Flowers is a good high school basketball player too.
Alec Pierce.
I'm hearing
Alec
Alec
Pierce.
Pierce. I'm hearing Kenny Moore.
Alec Pierce, literally his family is a basketball
Right.
family.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, his brother's playing professionally.
We got
right
some
now.
pretty good potential analysts here. If in case for the YouTube commenters who are like, quit talking about the Pacers, what if we got a football player on to talk about the Pacers? That
Then
might
you'd
help.
be loving it, right? And Larry, I'm going to leave it up to you to get those guests in studio.
Oh, okay.
with
That
you,
sounds
all right?
great.
Real easy. Speaking of guests, all right, we do another reminder. Reckless predictions are coming up. But Ben Arthur covers the AFC South for Fox Sports. He had a chance to sit down with JJ, talk about the Colts opposition coming up this NFL season.
All right, joining me here on the official Colts podcast from Fox Sports and the Fox Sports app, that's where you can read his work. He is also a candidate for the Terez A. Paylor Emerging Writer Award presented by the Pro Football Writers Association of America, a great honor for the late, great Terez Paylor. It's Ben Arthur from Fox Sports and again from the Fox Sports app. Ben, thanks so much for taking some time here.
JJ, thanks so much for having me, and thank you for the kind words as well.
It's good to have you on. I know I've met you a couple times, whether we've been down in Tennessee, you've been up at training camp, but your knowledge of the AFC South is why I wanted to get you on here, because you cover the AFC South and you know exactly what's going on with all four of the teams in the division. So I just want to get your thoughts on the strengths and weaknesses that each of these teams that the Colts are going to be battling for the division have going into kind of the training camp preseason period here. So let's start with the division champions, the Houston Texans. Ben, where is the strength, like the number one strength of this Houston Texans team as things stand right now?
Well, honestly, they have a lot of strengths. I mean, they're a very loaded roster, but I think, first of all, you have to start with that passing attack, right? Like you think of what CJ Stroud did in year one, what he can only become in year two, plus Tank Dell's second season. A lot of people forget that he missed the last 7 games for them. Nico Collins had 1,300 receiving yards last season. And then you add Stephon Diggs on top of all that. You have 3 guys who each of them could probably be a number one receiver if they were like the guy on another team in the NFL. So when you think of that, plus CJ's ability to throw the deep ball, I mean, you have to start with them. Like their explosive passing attack is at, if not at, it's near the top of the NFL.
Where do you see the, I guess the personality of Stephon Diggs fitting in with that Houston Texans team that, DeMeco Ryans last year did such a good job changing the entire feeling around that building, around that team. You do add someone in Diggs who, like when I've talked to people in Buffalo, they've said he's not as big of a problem as people made him out to be, but he does have a big personality who's stepping into a situation that, kind of DeMeco Ryans has really built up a certain kind of culture there.
Yeah, I think for Stephon Diggs, I mean, he should be, regardless of what has or hasn't happened in Buffalo, and then even dating back to his time in Minnesota, like he should absolutely be on his best behavior. He should be incentivized to do so, right? Like the Texans wiped out the final 3 years of his contract. This is like a contract year for him. If he balls out in Houston, he's going to get a massive deal, probably his last massive deal, considering his age. And so if I'm Stephon Diggs, I'm going to be on my best behavior. I'm going to lead this team. I'm going to lead this wide receiver room. I'm going to be as available for CJ Stroud as I could possibly be. I'm going to fit this vision that DeMeco Ryans has for me on this team. And so regardless of who he is or who he isn't, I would expect Stephon Diggs, knowing the stakes for him and his pockets, that he will be absolutely on his best behavior. That's what my expectation is.
The Texans last year were an offense that they really emphasized running the ball, even if they maybe weren't all that good at it, which seemed to really benefit CJ Stroud, right? Where it's that Shanahan offense where you get the play action and everything is kind of built off of the run. How does the addition of Joe Mixon to that group, does that improve the run game? I know he's got some tread on his tires, but how do you see that improving the run game and making the Texans maybe a more efficient offense when they do hand the ball off?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Mixon is certainly one of the better running backs in the NFL. As you said, he does have some tread on his tires, but I think he does help them in a few areas. Number one, he's a better pass catcher out of the backfield. Number two, his touchdown rate, like in the red zone inside the 20, was much higher than Devin Singletary. And you look at as good as the Texans offense was last season, they did struggle once they got close to the end zone, and having a rushing threat in the backfield who could basically plow his way into the end zone and not having to rely so much on CJ's arm at that part of the field. I think that'll help them a lot. And then I think that there's some, like, from an athletic standpoint too, I think Mixon does have a gear that Devin Singletary didn't have. Like he has more acceleration. Like you look at the way he runs, which could open up the field a little bit more. So I think those are some of the biggest ways that he could impact this Texans offense and take even more pressure off of CJ.
All right, if we get to mid-January and I'm talking to you again then, and I go, hey, Ben, why didn't the Texans win the AFC South? Why did they not repeat as division champions? Right now, as we're sitting here, and I know it's May, but what do you think that reason is most likely to be if the Texans do not repeat as division champions?
Yeah, I think it would probably be the secondary. We've talked so much about, well, when I say we, I mean just NFL media, league observers have talked so much about what they've done up front. You think of Will Anderson being in year two. He won Offensive Rookie of the Year, adding Daniil Punter, who I know the Colts were in on. But the secondary is somewhat shaky, right? Because I mean, you have Derek Stingley Jr., who's a phenomenal player, but he hasn't been consistently available to this point in his career. And the spot opposite for him at the cornerback spot, there is some uncertainty there. Steven Nelson isn't going to be back in Houston. They did draft Kamari Lassiter with their top pick out of Georgia. He could help, but again, he's a rookie, and then they have a couple of former top 10 picks in CJ Henderson and Jeff Okudah, who haven't worked out at other places. So those three guys are really going to be battling it out for that CB2 spot. And so I think it's just going to be really fascinating kind of how all that shakes up. Derek Stingley is going to do his job, but on the other side, I'm not as confident. And then in the secondary too, Jimmy Ward, who is their starting safety last season, he missed a lot of time. When you look at like the explosive pass plays given up towards the end of last season, the Texans ranked near the bottom of the league just in terms of the amount of that they were giving up. And so I think that could be an issue for them, especially when you look at the caliber of quarterbacks in the AFC and you look at the teams they're going to face this season, let alone their division, which already has good quarterbacks, but the AFC as a whole, I think they could run into issues there. So if we're looking mid-January and they didn't meet expectations, as we look at it in May, I would say probably the secondary would be the reason why.
I mean, they are, like you kind of alluded to, Ben, they are playing a first place schedule, which comes with its own challenges. But just to put a cap on the Texans discussion, we probably haven't talked about CJ Stroud enough in this. Like, CJ Stroud had one of the best rookie seasons a quarterback has ever had in NFL history last year. He never looked like the moment was too big for him. He goes in and he wins a playoff game where they put up, 45 points on the Browns with really good defense. Yeah. Him as the quarterback for the Texans, is there any reason to believe that his development will not be kind of linear and keep going up? Or, like any rookie quarterback, are there potential pitfalls that could happen with him? Or is he just a guy who he's probably going to be great his entire career? Like, where do you sort of see CJ after year one?
Yeah, I think he's definitely the guy that can be great his entire career. I don't know how big of a jump from year one to year two he can make because that year one play was already superstar level play. So I don't know how much more of a jump we'll see just in his second season, but I do expect him to continue to take step forwards. I mean, you look at the way he plays the game, the way he sees the game, and how pressure never got to him. I think that's the most impressive thing about him, no matter what the stakes were, game situation, the moment of the game, that didn't seem to rattle him. And when you look at some of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, they all kind of have that attribute. And so for that reason, I expect the ascent to continue. But it's going to be interesting, like, as you said, because now teams are going to have a full year of tape of him, right? Like he's not going to catch people by surprise. As we've discussed, they're going to have a first place schedule. They're going to be playing better defenses this year. Having the cast of weapons he has is certainly going to help. Tank Dell is only going to improve. Nico Collins is going to improve. Adding Stephon Diggs is going to help. And then having a healthy offensive line, I think could be really big for them because they have some really highly paid guys up front that got hurt towards the end of the year. So I think all that is going to help. But yeah, I don't expect, what I'm trying to say, I think, is that I don't expect like another massive just step, right? I think he'll continue that upward trajectory, but I'm skeptical that it will be just this meteoric step in year two.
All right, let's talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars, who finished second in the AFC South last year with a 9-8 record. Same as the Colts, they had the tiebreaker over the Colts based on winning both games in the season series. What is the strength of this Jacksonville Jaguars team as we sit here right now in May, Ben?
Yeah, the defensive line is the number one strength. If not Houston, the Jags have the top defensive line. I mean, you look at what Josh Allen did last season, got a well-deserved payday after setting the franchise record for single season sacks. Trayvon Walker took a massive leap as the former number one overall pick, who kind of had a slow rookie year, had like 3.5 sacks, if I remember correctly, in 2022. Had 10 plus in year two. Those two guys combined for 27.5 sacks, which led the NFL in terms of duos last season. And then you add Eric Armstead to that, an interior presence. That they could, I think, really the sky could be the limit up front. And we talk about the caliber of passing attacks in their division and in the AFC as a whole. You have to have a line that could really disrupt the clock for these quarterbacks in the pocket, and the Jags certainly have a line that can do that. And then I think through the draft they added some depth up front. They added 2 D tackles out of LSU, and then they added an edge rusher out of Texas Tech in the 7th round as well. So I think that they have the top end talent, and then they also have the depth, I think, to be one of the best D lines in the NFL.
They changed coordinators. Obviously, Mike Caldwell let go last year. They bring in Ryan Nielsen, who was the Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator. Before that, he was in New Orleans. What sort of style of play can the Colts and the rest of the AFC South expect out of Ryan Nielsen? And how do those pieces on the D-line fit with the way that Ryan Nielsen wants to play his team?
Yeah, I think first of all, like the Jags, from a schematic standpoint, they're going to be a lot more aggressive this year. Like really pressing guys at the line of scrimmage, like press man. That's kind of been that's what Ryan Nielsen is known for. That's what he built Atlanta's defense to be. And then on top of that, like he's a defensive line specialist too. So when we talk about them already have what could be a dominant D line, having a guy in Nielsen who has a great reputation for building defensive linemen, like going back to like Cam Jordan when he was with New Orleans. And if I remember correctly, last season the Falcons they like doubled their sack total from 2022. So yeah, when we think of what we can expect from them this year, that they'll be a lot more aggressive in coverage, and then just in terms of getting after the quarterback, I think we'll see kind of all the guys really get after it, and we could see, yeah, I think that they could definitely wreak havoc up front.
All right, what about a weakness for this Jaguars team? Where do you feel like the maybe number one most glaring weakness of the Jaguars have is?
Yeah, I would say it's tough. I would maybe say the offensive line. I'm not totally convinced about. Their run game had a lot of issues last season. I think they were like 24th or 25th in rushing yards per game. Travis Etienne wasn't really able to get loose, and part of that was just the fact that the left side of the line was a revolving door due to injury and suspension. But the reason why I say this could be like a weakness for them again is because they're basically running it back with the same line, banking that continuity, that hoping everyone, being there will kind of help the run game, will help keep Trevor Lawrence upright. And I'm not sure that I really I'm not confident that will be that will work out for them. They did add Mitch Morse, a veteran center who's been with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes before that. So he's a good veteran piece in the middle of that line. But overall, I'm just not totally convinced about this offensive line. And if that run game isn't getting going, then that puts a lot of pressure on Trevor Lawrence, who we've seen. Trevor Lawrence has shown flashes of greatness, but he hasn't shown that consistency that a lot of people thought. So if that O-line isn't right for him, that they're going to struggle. And so I'm just not confident about what they've done up front.
I was really curious about Lawrence and your perspective on this, Ben, because when I pulled up his season numbers from last year, I was honestly shocked at how not great they were. Like, you watch him play and you're like, yeah, this guy, he's really good. The numbers didn't maybe match the way that I think about Trevor Lawrence. And you look at, I think he was third in Pro Football Focus's turnover-worthy plays, but also near the top in big-time throws. Yeah. He seems to be a quarterback who maybe the circumstances around him led to those numbers being where they were, as opposed to him individually struggling. Like, how did you digest the season Lawrence had last year, knowing, by the way, that, there are rumors out there the Jaguars are going to be willing to pay him over $50 million a year in a market rate contract extension coming down the pike?
Yeah, I think for Trevor Lawrence, it's kind of both of what you said. It's kind of the circumstances around him, like the offensive line, as I talked about, the run game not getting going, putting a lot of pressure on him to make things happen. The wide receiver injuries they had last season, Christian Kirk missed a lot of time. Zay Jones missed a lot of time. And Calvin Ridley, who is their only top receiver to play all 17 games, is now with a rival in the Titans. So the receiving struggles played an issue. And then also the play calling was kind of suspect. A lot of people outside of Jacksonville don't like really understand that it wasn't Doug Peterson who was calling plays last season. It was their offensive coordinator, Press Taylor, and you just look at the way their offense, the flow, it just wasn't as smooth as it was in 2022 when of course they went on that run to win the division title. And so there are a lot of things going around Trevor that hurt him, but then he also has to play better too. Like you mentioned, like the turnover worthy plays, like since entering the NFL, he has 60 turnovers. So that's over 3 seasons, which leads the NFL in that span. Last season, he had 24 turnovers, which was 3rd in the league. He has a propensity to turn the ball over. And it's not just like interceptions and whatnot, sometimes fluky plays. It's the inability to really protect the ball in the pocket. Like with him, like it's a lot of strip sacks, a lot of D linemen getting able to kind of get a handout and him not really having a firm grip of the ball. And so it's a combination of Trevor needing to play better, but also the circumstances needing to improve. And it just all kind of goes back to like that Trevor hasn't been what people expected. Like he's been great at times. We've seen that flashes. Like you said, there are times where it's like, man, like this is the reason why he was a generational prospect. But then there are other times where it's like you're just kind of left scratching your head. And so right now, it just seems like the Jags just need to make sure like the surrounding cast, because at least to this point, he hasn't proven to be the kind of quarterback that can just transcend circumstances that may not be in his favor. Like he's not like a Patrick Mahomes or a Lamar Jackson, like that type, at least not yet. And so their focus has really been on trying to build up that team around him in hoping that the turnover, some of that decision making can improve. And so yeah, and as you said, the Jags are committed to paying him a top market deal. They've publicly said that a number of times. I expect it to happen in the next couple months. If not like this week, it could happen this week for all I know.
By the time this podcast is out.
Hey, it could, JJ, like for real. But yeah, Trevor has to play better. It comes down to that. But the Jags also know there are some things that they could do around him to help make him more comfortable.
All right, let's get to the Titans here. Team finishes last in the division in 2023. They move on from Mike Vrabel. They hire Brian Callahan as their head coach, and then they kind of go on a spending spree this offseason that I don't know if a lot of people saw coming. Calvin Ridley, a lot of money for him. They bring in Tony Pollard, quite a bit of money there. I guess just baseline with the Titans, before we get into strengths and weaknesses, were you surprised that they were so aggressive in free agency, given it's the first year of a new head coach? You sometimes don't see teams be as aggressive as the Titans were when it is kind of a new regime coming in.
Yeah, JJ, I wasn't really surprised because their roster was so talent deficient. They needed to be aggressive, and obviously they had the money to spend, but they needed to be aggressive to shore up depth basically across their roster. They had holes at basically every position. And a big reason is because of how bad they've been drafted the last several years. That's why their former general manager, John Robinson, was fired in December of 2022, because
22, yeah.
The bad drafts just kept stacking on, and you just get to a point to where your roster, you don't have talent to work with. They had a lot of undrafted guys who were forced to play a lot of meaningful snaps last season, and they needed to get to a point to where they could kind of replenish the roster. And of course, long-term, you want to build your team through the draft, but to give Brian Callahan, their new coach, a chance to start that foundation, they needed to spend a lot. And they also need to know if Will Levis is their quarterback of the future. That's been the number one priority in that building, is finding out if Will Levis is your franchise quarterback or not. And the way you do that is by spending money. That's why they've invested so much at the wide receiver position, investing on the O-line, investing in a guy like Tony Pollard, even though you lost Derrick Henry. That's why we see some of the moves they've made. So I wasn't surprised.
So real quick, let's just do real quick strengths and weaknesses for them, because then I want to talk about Levis. So give me real quick your bullet points on the strength of this Titans team and maybe the biggest weakness that the Titans have.
Yeah, the strengths are at the skill positions. I would say, and when I say skill, I mean wide receiver. Because they have very legitimate top three, maybe the best the franchise has had since it moved to Tennessee. Like in Ridley, D-Hop, and Tyler Boyd, who they signed a couple weeks ago. And then also cornerback. They might have the best cornerback room in the NFL, to be 100% honest. Like they have two of the top four, like they have two guys last season who didn't allow a touchdown in coverage in the regular season, who played at least 450 coverage snaps, in Roger McCreary and L'Jarius Sneed, who they acquired from Kansas City. So those are, I'd say those two are the biggest strengths.
Well, real quick, what's interesting about that is that those are two positions where the Titans used a first-round draft pick in consecutive years. They took Caleb Farley in 2021, and then they took Treylon Burks in 2022, and neither of those guys are factors in what you're talking about here, which I think goes into why the Titans spent quite a bit in free agency. Yeah,
exactly.
So what's kind of the number one weakness of this team?
Yeah, I think the weakness until they play, it's the offensive line. I mean, this has been probably the worst offensive line in the NFL for the last 2 years. Left tackle has been the most glaring issue, that they hope they have their guy in J.C. Latham, who is probably the most powerful offensive tackle in this year's draft class. They brought him in, but he played right tackle at Alabama. They're switching him to left, so that's going to be a really fascinating transition. But they have, in addition to kind of the moves they've made, they've added probably arguably the best offensive line coach in modern NFL history, in Bill Callahan. So if there's anyone that could help J.C. Latham make that transition to help the unit overall play better, it's Bill Callahan. So yeah, offensive line, until they play, it has to be that, because I mean, between Levis and Ryan Tannehill, I mean, they've been getting slaughtered in the pocket. So yeah, that has to improve.
So let's real quick talk about Levis here before we get you out of here, Ben. I kind of liked what I saw from him last year. Like it wasn't like, you turn it on and you're like, oh, this is just efficient. Everything's on time. Everything's in rhythm. But like, he's got some like competitive edge to him that I really like. There's one play when the Colts are playing the Titans in, was it week 13 or 14 last year, where he just took off and took like this huge shot where he almost like John Elway helicoptered over the middle. And it's like, I don't know if I love my quarterback doing it, but I kind of love my quarterback doing that, especially when you're, he has maybe this little bit of an underdog mentality, slip into the second round. Like, what do you think of Will Levis? What do you think of his potential and his shot at being the Titans franchise quarterback with the infrastructure they have around him?
Yeah, I'm bullish, JJ, on what Will Levis can become. I think it was really hard last season to get a proper assessment on him last season, not only because he played such a few, like he only played 9 games, right? Ryan Tannehill was the starter for the first half of the season, but all the issues they had, they couldn't protect him. Even when they were able to maybe protect him a little bit, they didn't have the wide receiver personnel to really do damage outside of DeAndre Hopkins. And so yeah, as I said, like this offseason has been about investing in playmakers for Levis, investing in protection for Will Levis, so that for a fact, like if he's the guy or not. We saw the flashes. We saw the Miami game. Like, I don't know if you remember that, but like
that comeback was incredible.
Yeah, being down like 14 points in the last couple minutes or so. And that in a nutshell is what the Titans hope he can be. And he certainly has the arm, he has the persona, the fiery spirit, as you mentioned, and the guys really rally behind that. Like, he has a really good relationship with DeAndre Hopkins, a veteran receiver who's very accomplished in the NFL. So when you talk about some of those plays, like that helicopter play that happened, I think it was actually EJ Speed who's like trying to make the tackle there. But yeah, the team loves that. The old linemen love it. The receivers love it, that the quarterback is putting their body on the line. Obviously, you want to limit it, right? And we know he can run a little bit, but yeah, I think what we're going to see, right? What we're going to see if he's actually the guy or not, but he has all the tools, and we know he has the arm strength as well. So yeah, he's going to have every opportunity to show that he's the guy.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here to get you out of here, Ben. If you are picking, you can pick one franchise to kind of put your weight behind for the next 3 seasons in the AFC South. Which franchise are you taking to be like, this team has the most upside, the best shot at not just being multiple-time division winners, but legitimate Super Bowl contenders?
The Texans.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
I as soon as I was saying it, I was like, I bet I know where this is going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has to be the Texans because, like, as long as you have a quarterback of that caliber, like, you're always going to have a chance. Like, they're going to have to figure it out over the next several years. And just from a roster building standpoint, because they have invested a lot of money in the next year or two, just in terms of the investments they've made on veterans. And they're going to have to keep replenishing the roster with good drafts like they did with CJ's class. But yeah, as long as you have a quarterback like that, I mean, you're going to have a chance every year. They could be in the Super Bowl conversation this year. So it would have to be Houston.
Where do you see, so we haven't talked about the Colts like at all in this, because you're such a wealth of knowledge on teams that, I and we here in Indianapolis don't know as much about, but where do you see the Colts fitting in this division in 2024 and then beyond?
Yeah, I'm high on the Colts. I mean, you look at what they did last season, considering the circumstances, as you're well aware of, won 9 games with Gardner Minshew playing most of the season, not having Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor missing a lot of time, Braden Smith missing a lot of time. They didn't even have Jelani Woods for all season. The Colts can do some damage. Like, I just think of what Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor together can do. Just the fact that they played 2 snaps together should be concerning for other teams in the division in particular. And so I'm high on them, and I love what they've done on the D line, adding Latu to already a deep pass rush unit that they have. I think my one concern with them, and I know all you guys in Indy have talked about, is like, what's this secondary going to look like? Because they didn't invest another top pick at corner. You're banking a lot on kind of 7th round undrafted talent back there. And then I know safety is a spot of concern as well. You got Julian Blackmon back, but what are you getting beyond him? So I have some concerns there. But as long as Anthony Richardson stays healthy, and there's a whole part of Shane Steichen's playbook that we haven't really seen. So because of that, I mean, I think they're the second best team in the division, just projection wise. So.
All right. Well, Ben Arthur, you are a wealth of knowledge about the AFC South. He is the AFC South reporter for FoxSports.com and on the Fox Sports app. Read all of his great work there. Ben, thanks so much for taking some time with us here today on the Official Colts podcast. We will be sure to have you back on at some point as we look ahead to the 2024 season.
Appreciate you having me, JJ. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben Arthur. Good stuff. Obviously, some great quarterback play across the AFC South. And a couple of years ago, we were like, boy, people are making fun of this division when it comes to the quarterback play.
A couple of years ago. That's 2 years ago.
That's what I'm saying. It was like, but now you look at this across the board, and we got, oh, my God, Trevor Lawrence is signing for a long time, going to stay in Jacksonville. We know what CJ's doing. Will Levis is the answer down in Tennessee. Obviously, Anthony Richardson. Cannot wait. But great job to Ben Arthur and to you on that. Find out more at Colts.com. All the latest information, especially from this week with Wednesday being open. We're going to that'll be tomorrow. You're going to have some latest and greatest from the OTAs. JJ, you'll be on it. I know LO, you'll be covering it as well. So I wanted to get into some reckless predictions where not we may get in trouble. We probably will get in trouble.
That's just like, what makes it reckless? Like that's
because it's May. What makes it reckless is like it's way too early to do this, but let's do it anyway.
I'm going to start and set the pace, not to steal a term from the Brickyard over there, but I'm going to set the pace and say Anthony Richardson, 4 games under his belt as a rookie last year. I'm saying my reckless prediction is the The offensive rookie of the year last year was C.J. Stroud with over 4,100 yards, 23 TDs, 5 interceptions, 100.8 QBR. My reckless prediction is Anthony Richardson's 2024 stats will better C.J. Stroud's rookie campaign where he won the Rookie of the Year, but I'm saying a healthy Anthony Richardson will put up better numbers than C.J. Stroud did in his first season with the Texans.
That's pretty reckless because C.J. Stroud was pretty good last year.
That's what I'm saying. That's a big number.
No disrespect to Anthony,
nothing,
but like,
nothing
okay,
at all.
all right.
But that's what I'm saying. Like having a year, you want a year? That's a year.
I love it. I love it. What Anthony actually hasn't given us a reason to believe that if he is healthy for an entire season, he won't be great. He's not
Absolutely.
given us a reason yet.
So my prediction, Anthony Richardson, comeback player of the year.
Boom.
Oh,
love it. Okay.
love it.
He's sharing a quarterback room with last year's comeback player of the year.
Yeah.
What better? What
Good
better
point.
way? Right?
Joe Flacco, who maybe was the biggest upset winning comeback player of the year over DeMar Hamlin last year.
Yeah.
Okay, my reckless prediction. This isn't that
that
reckless.
reckless?
I should maybe go a little more reckless. Jonathan Taylor is going to have a 12-12 year next year. 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns on the ground.
Oh,
Last
that's
year,
good.
there was only one player in the NFL who did that.
Conservatively reckless.
It
Like,
does,
I
except
feel like
last
it's a
year.
little more bold.
Last year, there was only
I feel
one
like-
player. There was only one player who had over 1,200 rushing yards and over 12 or more touchdowns. It was Christian McCaffrey.
That's right. I'm laughing. I'm
So-
sorry. Can we have a new segment? I mean, not a new segment, but a new. There's reckless predictions and there's conservatively reckless predictions. Which one does have
Okay.
1,200? That's not bad, though.
No,
That's
it's a
not
good one.
bad.
That is,
I'm looking at
that
it
is
because
specific.
when I was
That
looking
is-
at
mine
this,
was kind of general.
when
so,
I was
yeah.
looking at this yesterday, I was like, there was only one player who went 12-12 last year. I think Jonathan Taylor can do it this year. And then as I was saying it, I'm like, is that really that reckless? Should I go like 14-14? Like, how nuts should we go here?
I don't know.
I mean,
If
JT was
can I
18-20
just-
a couple years
one
ago.
thing too, when we're talking about position groups, like a sneaky, interesting position group is that running back
Behind
room as
Jonathan
well.
Taylor.
Behind Jonathan Taylor, it is wide open because Zach Moss is now in Cincinnati. Trey Sermon, Evan Hull. Like, I mean, that group is going to be very compelling to see how they split reps getting into training camp and what that rotation looks like and those complements that you need to have surrounding Jonathan Taylor, because you had such a good one with JT and Zach Moss and you knew what you had. You know, do you have that tandem of sorts with JT and Trey Sermon, with Evan Hull being a different style of weapon? Tyler Goodson, of course. Like, I mean, there are a lot of guys, you know, in that rotation. So
great position group
Did
to
you
watch.
know,
Yeah.
by the way, this is kind of going into the whole running back thing, but last year there were only 12 running backs to have over 1,000 rushing yards. In 2003, there were 18
Wow.
to hit that mark.
Game's changed a little
2003?
Yeah. How about you want to go back to like 1993? Let's just keep going back further here.
It has to be the emergence of dual threat quarterbacks, right? I mean, just
Well,
that's
it's
part
more
of
that
it,
there's
like,
not the bell cow running back
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
That position is not as prevalent. Although I guess in 1993 there were only 11. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not onto something.
Can we
here.
stop for a minute and go over bell cow again, which I love that term. But what's your? Are you saying at the fair, like
That's a good point.
The best cow they give
I'm
him.
gonna find this.
They put the bell.
That's
a really good point. I've never
I love
actually
the
thought about
term.
the origin of that.
Here, okay, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to go back to my, my grandparents, born and raised in Tennessee, living on farms and all that. Isn't it the one that wears the bell is like the leader of the herd?
Yeah,
like
I'm
kind of
thinking
like
that's why-
like that's the one
You're,
who's
you're talking
the
to like
ringing-
a tried and true city slicker here, so I have no idea.
The one that's ringing the bell is like leading. That's what everyone responds
that's
to
the
and
bell cow,
congregates
yeah.
around.
I think
Bell
you're right
cow-
on that.
Bell cow meaning.
I think you're right on that.
See, I would-
Cow-
I would-
The
I would
lead
guess
cow
state
of
fair.
a herd. Yeah,
lead cow.
the lead cow.
Okay, then
See,
that
I
makes
would
sense.
have guessed
has
the state
a
fair.
bell attached to a collar around its neck so that the herd can be located easily.
Not many times do we
Yes.
do impressions.
No,
on
Yes.
hold on. Producer
Norma
Colin
and
back here
Bobby
is
would
a
be so
Wisconsin
happy.
guy. So like,
The bell
if
cow.
does the bell cow, is that like the best Holstein in the milk cow group? Yes. Great. Colin says yes. So and the leader of the herd.
Thank you.
Where Colin
Spotted
was,
cow.
yeah, where Colin was right.
That's
there.
what I know.
If I'm asking questions about cows, I'm probably going to the Wisconsin guy.
Okay, you have to be over 50 years old
Cheese curds for everybody.
to enjoy this. I'm starting a new segment. It's called Impressions by Gorman, but this is the
Oh,
only
boy.
time it's one and done. But
We once got
But-
a 1-star review on Apple Podcasts due to the impressions. So let's go.
Well, this one's going lower than this. But I used to watch a guy call college football, and his name was Keith Jackson, and in my opinion was the greatest
really
of
good.
all time. And he would say, and they'd go over the starting lineups, camps, and he would go, and this is a bad impression of it, he'd go, and finally there's Vance Gardner-White from Baylor, who is 6'7", 314 pounds, and he wears the cowbell. So that's what, when you said your thing, that's where I got the cowbell from, because cowbell running backs, but what you said, and I agree with you, kind of the leader of the pack.
Can I get an "Oh Doctor" in your Keith Jackson voice?
Oh, doctor.
Very
Here we
good.
go. Fumble. Scramble for it. Michigan's on it. Anyway,
That's at least worth 3 stars in a podcast review,
It's pretty
please.
bad. We'll have to get Matt Taylor in here that'll critique it. But
Matt
guys,
Taylor and the impressions.
I'm
yes.
telling you what, reckless predictions is going to be a thing. I'm saying right now, you guys can overrule me. Let's come back next week with another segment of reckless
Great.
predictions.
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
We're
Let's
in.
go.
And that means you. Whoa, that means you. That means at Lara Overton. That means at JJ Stankovitz. I'm at Hey Gorman. Do you agree with reckless predictions? No?
Hit us with some in the
Let us know.
YouTube comments.
I wanna hear
If I
yours.
see one that I like in there, I'll bring it up. I might just steal it.
I got one. You guys are talking and spinning in my head and stuff. And I'm spinning in my head again. I'm like, I got one for Steichen. Okay, wow. I got one. The offensive line. Okay, I got one for there. I got one for there. So I'm saying this may be a couple of things. We can get this sponsored. Look out. Look out if we can get it sponsored. How about sponsored from a dairy farm in Wisconsin?
Yep.
The Bell Cow. No?
Or New Glarus.
All right, big game tonight in the Garden. Pacers,
Let's get it sponsored by a beer you can't even buy here. Perfect.
something in Wisconsin. All right, no reckless predictions, but tonight it starts in the Garden. Give me your prediction tonight. What happens? I think I might have asked you earlier, but say it one more time for me. Tonight they get in, they get out. They got to win one of these two on the road, right, Lara?
You do. I'm going to say Celtics get game 1, Pacers game 2.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I think Celtics probably game 1, and then you're going to see about a 30-point performance out of Miles Turner in game 2.
Let's go. I love that.
That's you want a prediction. There you go.
That's not reckless. I like what you're talking about. Go Pacers. It's a big one tonight, and this city is a buzz, obviously, with the 500. But let's not forget, our Colts are in OTAs, and training camp is right around the corner. Colts.com has all the information you need, and if you want to follow on Twitter, do it. The best in the business for this club is right there, at Lara Overton, at JJ Stankovitz. Guys, it's fun. More reckless predictions and
Thanks
talk
for
about
being our bell cow, JG.
I'm not the bell cow, but I appreciate it. I'm just riding coattails, loving it. Hey, more to go over. We're going to talk to you on social media. Don't forget about Colts.com and at JJ, at Lara Overton. Let us know what you think, and I want some reckless predictions, guys.
Or suggestions for more Gorman impressions.
There we
Yes.
go. Or bad Gorman impressions. I'm up for it. Guys, that was fun. Anything on the way out? Anything? There it is.
Pato Award going to win the Indy 500 this weekend.
Wow.
Pato Award.
That Kenny Moore would be happy.
He would be.
He's a
I would
big
also
Pato
be
guy.
happy. I've just decided I'm going to root for Pato this weekend.
I'm going Elio, and what the heck? I'll go Elio because he's got 5, right? Is he even running in this one? Or anything? Yeah, he's running in this one. He's got 5. I'm going Elio.
Yeah.
I do it every year.
Okay,
So.
great.
Who do you like?
Mika Hakkinen.
Mika Hakkinen.
Great
Greatest
name.
name in sports.
Greatest name.
Colin says Stingray Rob.
Stingray Rob?
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
a great call. Good luck to all the racers out there because we got a great weekend happening. Obviously, Sunday race, but a lot going on. Go Pacers, go 500, go Colts for Lara, for JJ. I'm Jeffrey Gorman. We'll talk to you next week.